Namaste students. Today we are going to begin with the new chapter from Flamingo, that is Deep Water by William Douglas. William Douglas was born on 16th October 1898 and he died on 19th January 1980. He was an American jurist and politician who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Nominated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he was confirmed at the age of 40, one of the youngest justices appointed to the court. His term, lasting 36 years and 211 days, that is from 1939 till 75, is the longest in the history of the Supreme Court. This particular chapter is an extract from the book Men and Mountains by William Douglas. Over here, the author tells us about how he overcomes the deep rooted fear of water. We learn that the author develops fear of water following two very dreadful incidents. In his first one, he is 4 years old when a wave knocks him down. Similarly, in the second one, he is 11 years of age. A bully throws him in the deep end of the pool and almost drowns. Thus, having gone through such scary experiences, he fears water deeply. However, he does work really hard to overcome it. Finally, we learn about the measures he takes to overcome his fear. Moreover, he accomplishes in overcoming the fear and gives us all a great lesson of determination and willpower. So let's see what is there in the chapter. It's a very interesting chapter, how he overcomes his fear of water. Page number 23. It happened when it had happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. I had decided to learn to swim. There was a pool at the YMCA in Yakima that offered exactly the opportunity. Now, what is YMCA? YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. It's a place where people can play sports, take classes, or stay cheaply. It is run by the YMCA organization. The Yakima River was treacherous. The meaning of the word treacherous is what? Cheating. A cheater, you can say, deliberately misleading. Mother continuously warned against it, and it kept fresh in my mind the details of each drowning in the river. If you remember, mother is actually always no. She's much more concerned about our safety. So whenever you go near a water body, near a river or a sea beach, on a sea beach, she will be always telling you incidences that you have to be careful because water is treacherous. What the water looks from far is not the water what it is. So if you go near the water, you may drown, you may be pulled in. No, and she will explain you all the incidences which happened there. So even the same way, author says that in this particular Yakima River, my mother always warned me not to go near the water, and now and then she told me the incidences, and those incidents always kept me away from the water. But the YMCA pool was safe. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, and while it was 9 feet deep at the other. The drop was gradual. It's quite natural. Almost all the swimming pool has this particular formation. I got a pair of water wings and went to the pool. I hated to walk naked into it and show my skinny legs, but I subdued my pride and did it. Of course, he was very, very thin, and so he says that actually I hated to show my skinny legs, but anyhow, I wanted to learn to swim, so I subdued. Subdued means to overcome my pride and did it. From the beginning, however, I had an aversion to the water when I was in it. What is the meaning of aversion? Aversion is what? The act of turning away from the object. Now, why he was turning away from the water? Because when he was just 2 or 3 years old, one incident happened in his life, and that incident had created a fear of water in his mind. This started when I was 3 or 4 years old, and father took me to the beach in California. He and I stood together in the surf. I hung on to him. Yet the waves knocked me down and swept over me. I was buried in water. My breath was gone. I was frightened. Father laughed, but there was terror in my heart at the overpowering force of the waves. This almost even you and I, almost all of us, we have experienced. Mother is very much careful. She asks us not to go to water. But if you see about our dad, our father, what he does, purposely he takes us to the water bodies and he makes or he throws in the water, he makes us to learn swimming because he knows if you want to save your life, you should know swimming. So, here, when he was a child of 2 or 3 years old, his father took him to a beach near California, and there, of course, they were in the water. He was hung to his father, but still, a wave knocked him down. And whenever I read this, we all remember. Even you have the same experience. We take in water through our nose, through our mouth, through our ears. We suffocate, and in the beginning, because of course his age was too young, 2 or 3 years old, if that fear is still there, that if we don't overcome that fear lives till we die. So here he's telling that that particular water incident had made him stay away from the water. My introduction to the YMCA swimming pool revived unpleasant memories and stirred childish fears. But in a little while, I gathered confidence. I pedaled with my new water wings, watching other boys and trying to learn by aping them. I did this 2 or 3 times on different days and was just beginning to feel at ease in the water when the misadventure happened. Of course, luckily, he had taken a firm decision that anyhow he will go to YMCA pool. He will learn to swim. In the initial stages, he said that he was very very scared, but by imitating other children over there, at least he tried to be in the water slowly and gradually. The fear of water, he tried to just overcome it. But before he learned to swim, he faced one more misadventure. What is that misadventure? I went to the pool when no one else was there. The place was quiet, the water was still, and the tiled bottom was as white and clean as a bathtub. I was timid about going in alone, so I sat on the side of the pool to wait for others. I had not been there long when in came a big bruiser of a boy means heavily built, prone to physical violences. Of a boy, probably 18 years old. He had thick hair on his chest. He was a beautiful physical specimen with legs and arms that showed rippling muscles. He yelled, "Hey, skinny, how would you like to be ducked?" With that, he picked me up and tossed me into the deep end. I landed in a sitting position, swallowed water, and went at once to the bottom. I was frightened, but not yet frightened out of my wits. Out of my wits in the sense to frighten someone to such an extent that they behave irrationally. So I was not out of my wits. I was still thinking what I should do next. Okay, he has dropped me into the water. As soon as I go down, what should I do? On the way down, I planned. When my feet hit the bottom, I would take a big jump, come to the surface, lie flat on it, and paddle to the edge of the pool. It seemed a long way down. Those 9 feet were more like 90, and before I touched bottom, my lungs were ready to burst. But when my feet hit bottom, I summoned all my strength and made what I thought was a great spring upwards. I imagined I could bob to the surface like a cork. Instead, I came up slowly. I opened my eyes and saw nothing but water. Water that had a dirty yellow tint to it. I grew panicky. I reached up as if to grab a rope, and my hands clutched only at water. I was suffocating. I tried to yell, but no sound came out. Then my eyes and nose came out of the water, but not my mouth. I fell at the surface of the water, swallowed and choked. I tried to bring my legs up, but they hung as dead weights, paralyzed and rigid. A great force was pulling me under. I screamed, but only the water heard me. I had started on a long journey back to the bottom of the pool. Only the people those who have gone through such experiences will try to understand what he had gone through, right? When we suppose like when we go to pool and if any of your elderly brother or sister had dropped you in water unconsciously or consciously or you can say purposely, and if you have gone through such experience only you will understand what happens. So this entire thing I need not explain you in detail because he has clearly mentioned what happened when he was going down, what he had planned, and what exactly happened. He searched for the support, but he didn't get anything. He just clutched water. He was suffocating, and again he was going down. I struck at the water as I went down, expanding my strength as one in a nightmare fights an irresistible force. I had lost all my breath. My lungs ached, my head throbbed. I was getting dizzy. When someone unknowingly pushes you in water, we are not aware and we don't know exactly what to do. We have to be actually calm. So here he says that of course he was suffocating. He was getting giddy. But I remember the strategy. I would spring from the bottom of the pool and come like a cork to the surface. I would lie flat on the water, strike out with my arms, and thrash with my legs. Then I would get to the edge of the pool and be safe. Again, he had planned the same thing as he was going down. I went down, down endlessly. I opened my eyes, nothing but water with a yellow glow, dark water that one could not see through. And then sheer stark terror seized me. Terror that knows no understanding. Terror that knows no control. Terror that no one can understand who has not experienced. I was shrieking underwater. I was paralyzed underwater, stiff, rigid with fear. Even the screams in my throat were frozen. Why? Because he couldn't, it really completely was chocked. Only my heart and the pounding in my head said that I was alive. And then, in the midst of the terror, came a touch of reason. I must remember to jump when I hit the bottom. At last, I felt the tides under me. My toes reached out as if to grab them. I jumped with everything I had, but the jump made no difference. The water was still around me. I looked for ropes, ladders, water wings, nothing but water. A mass of yellow water held me. Stark terror took an even deeper hold on me, like a great charge of electricity. I shook and trembled with fright. My arms wouldn't move. My legs wouldn't move. I cried to call for help, to call for mother. Nothing happened. And then, strangely, there was light. I was coming out of the awful yellow water. At least my eyes were. My nose was almost out too. Then I started down a third time. I sucked for air and got water. The yellowish light was going out. Then all effort ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, and a blackness swept over my brain. It wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice to be drowsy, to go to sleep. No need to jump. Too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently, to float along in space. Tender arms around me, tender arms like mothers. Now I must go to sleep. This particular paragraph speaks about his stage of going to unconsciousness. because third time again he was going down, and then he is saying, okay, fine, because he was tired. He tried his best, but he couldn't. I crossed to oblivion. Oblivion is forgetfulness. And the curtain of life fell. Of course, he did not die, but he became unconscious. The next I remember, I was lying on my stomach beside the pool, vomiting. The chap that threw me in was saying, but I was only fooling. Someone said, the kid nearly died. Be all right now. Let's carry him to the locker room. Several hours later, I walked home. I was weak and trembling. I shook and cried when I lie on my bed. I couldn't eat that night. For days, a haunting fear was in my heart. The slightest exertion upset me, making me wobbly in the knees and sick to my stomach. Sick to my stomach in sense to feel disgusted, to feel vomiting like me. So it's quite natural. The fear had overcome him, or you can say you can say captured him completely. For many many days, he couldn't even forget that incident. He used to feel sick of it. He used to feel as if the fear is haunting him. He got so scared of water that he avoided going near the water bodies. A few years later, when I came to know the waters of the Cascades, I wanted to get into them. And whenever I did, whether I was wading the Titan or bumping river or bathing in warm lake of the goat rocks, the terror that had seized me in the pool would come back. It would take possession of me completely. My legs would become paralyzed. Icy horror would grab my heart. You can see the pictures I've given you. Beautiful lakes of cascades. Titan River. It's called a bumping. It is also called as bumping river. Warm lake of the goat rocks. So whenever he went over there, he felt like doing it, but again that fear used to come to his. You can say used to take possession of him completely, and he used to get scared. His legs used to get paralyzed in the sense maybe the legs were shaking, he was scared, he couldn't go, he couldn't enjoy fishing, he couldn't enjoy boating, anything. This handicap stayed with me as the years rolled by. In canoes on main lakes fishing for landlocked salmon, bass fishing, if you can see it's a bass fish, trout fish. So when it's like he couldn't even enjoy fishing where you need to have a fishing rod in hand and just stand at the shore or bank of a river and just do fishing. Even that he did not dare because that fear was still there in his heart, in his mind. So trout fishing, fishing in New Hampshire, trout fishing on the Deschutes and Metolius in Oregon, fishing for salmon on the Columbia at Bumping Lake in the Cascades. Wherever I went, the haunting fear of the water followed me. It ruined my fishing trips, deprived me of the joy of canoeing, boating, and swimming. I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor and learn to swim. I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. The instructor put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran on an overhead cable. He held on to the end of the rope and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. On each trip across the pool, a bit of panic seized me. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope and I went under, some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. It was 3 months before the tension began to slack. Then he taught me to put my face under water and exhale, and to raise my nose and inhale. I repeated the exercise hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went underwater. If you remember your swimming classes, maybe within a week, you might have learned whatever the author is mentioning about, like inhaling, exhaling, or you can say the fear of water, which we have. We spend some time in the water, we walk in the water in the swimming pool, and that fear is gone. But author took almost many days to get rid of his fear, slowly, slowly, of course. And if you just this picture is not given properly. The rope was tied to his belt, and that rope went through a pulley overhead, and the other end of the rope was in the hand of the instructor. So he's telling that whenever he was, whenever he relaxed, as soon as I went in water, my face went underwater, again that fear used to overcome me. So next he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick my with my legs. Now this also, if you remember, I think many of you might have learned within 1 week, right? Kicking with the leg and then your hand strokes and all these things. Almost people, they take hardly, or the good learners, they take just 2 to 3 weeks to learn swimming. Of course, few of them, they take months. So here he's saying that next he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick with my legs. For weeks I did just that. At first my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed and finally I could command them. So slowly, slowly he learned. Thus, piece by piece, he built a swimmer. Piece in the sense, first of all, the first job he did was to get rid of the water, the fear of water which the author had. Then slowly, slowly inhaling, exhaling, then leg stroke, hand stroke, and then slow by slow, you can say piece by piece, he built a swimmer. And when he had perfected each piece, he put them together into an integrated whole. So part by part, he taught him to swim, and at last, of course, it was integrated together. In April, you can imagine he started to learn swimming in the month of October. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Almost it took him 7 months to learn swimming. In April, he said, "Now you can swim. Dive off and swim the length of the pool. Crawl stroke." I did. The instructor was finished. Was finished in the sense his job was finished. Now it was the author's job to not only to swim in the swimming pool but try swimming in lakes, rivers, and sea. So the next paragraph, but I was not finished. I still wondered if I would be terror stricken when I was alone in the pool. I tried it. I swam the length up and down. Tiny vestiges of the old terror would return. But now I could frown and say to that terror, trying to scare me, eh? Well, here's to you. Look, and off I would go for another length of the pool. So this particular paragraph tells okay, when instructor's job was done, it was his job to keep on practicing swimming. And once he's perfect, of course, he should try it outside in the open space. So this went on till July. But I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all the terror had left. So I went to Lake Wentworth. Now, this Lake Wentworth is the seventh largest lake in the world and it has almost 18 islands in it. So he went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stampat Island. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke, and backstroke. So all this type of you all know this type of swimming. So he tried all the strokes. Only once did the terror return, when I was in the middle of the lake. I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned in miniature. I laughed and said, "Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me?" It fled away, it fled, and I swam on. Yet I had residual doubts. Now, of course, in that particular lake, he tried, he practiced, he was able to move from one island to another island, but still he had doubts. What doubts? Still he has whether he is completely, he has overcome that fear. At my first opportunity, I hurried west, went to the Titan to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek, trail to Mead Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of warm lake. The next morning, I stripped, dived into the lake, and swam across to the other shore and back, just as Dow Corcoran used to do. Now, who's Corcoran? He's a swimmer. He used to swim across from one shore to other and back. And William Douglas, he tried to imitate this particular swimmer. So I shouted with joy when he was able to copy, or when he was able to do same like Mr. Copron. He shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned the echo. I had conquered my fear of water. The experience had a deep meaning for me, as only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can appreciate. In death, there is peace. There is terror only in the fear of death, as Roosevelt knew when he said, all we have to fear is fear itself. Now, you all are familiar with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was an American politician who served as the 32nd President of the United States from 1933 until his death in 1945. So, you can say he has mentioned that all we have to fear is fear itself. And once you overcome the fear, then you have nothing to fear at all. So here the author mentions that actually there is peace in death. It's quite natural. All of us, we are not scared of death. We are scared of how we are going to die, because no one wants to suffer. No one wants a suffering death. Everyone wants an easy death, because death is nothing. Death is end of everything, right? End of life, end of, no, we don't even get to know who are crying or who are laughing on when we die, or what happens next. Because in death there is peace. The only fear is how we are going to die. So once we are no once we conquer that fear, there is nothing to fear at all. That is what Roosevelt says, all we have to fear is fear itself. Because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew in intensity. Many times we can come across, we come across patients, those who are sufferers, especially cancer patients, or you can say AIDS patients. So many of them, they think that now whatever the remaining life they have nothing to do, and they completely give up. But there are few among, no, among lakhs, there are few, they say, okay, fine, whatever life I have, the remaining life I have, why don't I leave it? Why don't I leave it in a sense, live in full sense? Why don't I do utilize every seconds of it? So author says that he had already experienced that terror, and that terror, that fear had taught him that yes, you have to live, you have to overcome the fear, you have to conquer that fear and live your life, and that gives you more challenge. This particular chapter is really very, it's a real life experience of the writer. And when he speaks, we need not explain his, no, all the words. We have to just go on reading. Each and every line gives you the sensation of what he has gone through, because same experience we had gone through. Only thing is we had not kept that fear of water in our mind, because we had not experienced such a dreadful thing twice in life. Or maybe there are people, those who go, or those who face death, and once they face death, and once they conquer the death, after conquering the death, they are not fear of anything. They don't have fear of anything. So here he says, at last I released, free to walk the trails and climb the peaks and to brush aside fear. Once you give up your fear, once you learn to conquer your fear, no one can conquer you. You are the master of your own life. So this was a beautiful lesson. I didn't explain it because nothing was to explain in this. Once if you read it, it's very interesting, and it inspires all of us to, get rid of the obstacles or difficulties in life. If only we fight against it, if only we conquer it, then only we can live our life to the fullest. Otherwise, every day there is death. Like in Hindi, we have sayings, "Jo dar gaya wo mar gaya," right? So if we keep on having fear of everything, we won't be able to live our life. So with that, we end with this lesson. Lesson's name was Deep Water by William Douglas. So see you in the next class.